So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and it now weighs 8.2 pounds, but I want it bigger, so I went to Walmart, got a bunch more rubber bands, then went home, dumped them out, put some gloves on, then emptied out 2 bags of colored rubber bands, and got busy placing the entire pile. And after I finished the colored rubber bands, I dumped out 3 bags of normal rubber bands and placed that. I placed a bunch, but then left and came back the next day to place some more. It got tiring, and I placed a lot of rubber bands, so I left, took another break, and came back and started on it again. I was sure to place the whole bag this time, but I got too tired and had to leave and come back again the next day to finish it off. So that's what I did, and I finished it up. And it was done. It weighed 10 pounds, was bigger than my head, and bounced pretty high. Like if you want me to keep going. Part 7 of making a rubber band ball. So I've been making this ball, and it's pretty giant now and weighs 10 pounds. But I wanted it bigger, so I went to Walmart, got a bunch of colored rubber bands, then went home, dumped them out, put my gloves on, and first finished off the pile of normal rubber bands that was already on the table. And once I was done with that, I dumped out all the bags of colored rubber bands and began placing them. I did this for quite a while, and the ball was finished, and it was huge. And it now weighs 11.9 pounds and is almost the size of a basketball. And it also bounces pretty high. And I also shot it in the hoop. And now I'm officially finished with it. It looks pretty cool. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and it now weighs 11.9 pounds and is the size of a basketball. And I was going to stop, but everyone wanted me to keep going, so I went to Walmart, got some more bands, then went home, dumped them out, put some gloves on, and got back at it. I started by placing the pile of colored rubber bands because it's easier to place, and once I was done with that, I weighed it, and it was 12.9 pounds, and still bounced pretty high, and made a good basketball. Then I went to Walmart to get more colored rubber bands, but they were out, so I just got the normal ones and went home, dumped that out, and placed that entire pile. I finished it off, and it was now 13.4 pounds, and still the size of a basketball, and still bounced pretty high. Like if you want me to keep going and just see how big I can make it. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and it's pretty big now, but everyone wanted it bigger, so I went to Walmart to get more bands, but they were out, so I went to a different Walmart and got some. Then went home, set down a pile of bands, and got busy placing the entire thing until it was done. And then I dumped out a few more bags and first placed the bag of smaller rubber bands and then the bags of thicker rubber bands until I was done with that. And it now weighs nearly 16 pounds and still bounces pretty high, but it's hard to catch now. And it makes a decent basketball. Like if you want me to keep going. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and people seem to never want me to stop, so I went to Walmart, got a bunch more rubber bands, and then went home to start placing them. I dumped out the little bags first and began placing all of those until I was done, which took a while. Then I left and came back later to place all of the colored rubber bands, which took even longer, but now it looks pretty. I left again and came back to place the last bag of thicker rubber bands, and it was finally done. And it now weighs 17.5 pounds, is bigger than my head, and is pretty hard to catch when you bounce it. And now it's noticeably bigger than a basketball, like if you want me to continue this ball. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and it's getting pretty huge, and I'm probably not stopping. So I went to Walmart, got all the colored rubber bands they had, then went home, dumped out the bag of normal rubber bands, and placed that entire pile, which was kind of hard because of how big the rubber band ball is now. Then I took a couple days off and came back to place all 8 bags of colored rubber bands, which took a while, a long while. But eventually I finished, and it's huge now. It weighs 21.6 pounds and is a lot harder to throw and catch than it used to be, and almost impossible to make a basketball with, like if you want me to keep going. So I've been making this rubber band ball for way longer than I thought I'd be, and I'm just going to keep going. So I went to Walmart and they were out of rubber bands, so I left and came back a few days later and they had some. I went home, dumped them all out into a pile, and started placing them. And it's honestly just so satisfying to watch the pile go down. And when I was done, I left and came back later with a new bag that I ordered on Amazon. And the band seemed good, so I placed the entire pile until I was done. And it now weighs 23.6 pounds, is way bigger than my head, and it's really hard to throw, and even harder to make a basket with. But I made one. Like if I should keep going. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and I'm just going to keep adding rubber bands every time Walmart restocks. So I went there, got a few more bags of colored rubber bands, then went home and started with the 2 bags I ordered on Amazon. I placed the entire pile until you couldn't see a colored rubber band in sight. And then I left and came back later to place the colored rubber bands I got at Walmart. And I placed it until I was done. It's huge and now weighs almost 26 pounds, is super hard to throw and really hard to catch, but I can still make a basket with it and even stand on it now. Well, kinda. Like if you think I should keep going. So as you probably know, I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and I needed more rubber bands, so I went to Walmart. But they were out of the ones I needed, so I went to a different Walmart and they had some. Then I went home, dumped them all out, and got busy. And sped up, this all just looks really cool. Anyway, I finished that pile and took a break and came back later to finish this bag I ordered. And sadly, it's a lot less colorful now. But I'm done, and it now weighs 28.3 pounds and bounces decently. And I also made a basket. Like if I should keep going. So one day I got this comment that said to throw my rubber band ball off a hill, so I put it in my car and drove on out to a hill. I got out and carried it on up the hill, which was hard because it weighs 30 pounds, and I got to the top and threw it off. And it bounced and bounced and then started rolling, and it started bouncing again towards the bottom and went on out into the parking lot and just kept on going. And eventually I had to chase after it and jump over a fence, and I had it. And then we went back up the hill to try it again from this angle. And it went on down pretty steady, and then it looked like it was going to hit my car. And I got kind of nervous, so I started to chase after it. But it barely missed it and just went on out into the field. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball for quite a while now, and I'm out of rubber bands, so I went to Walmart, and they had so many colored rubber bands. I got them and then went back to carry even more and then left. I went home and started with this pack I ordered, and I placed the entire pile. And done. And then I took a break and came back later with all the colored rubber bands. I dumped them all out into a pile, which was a lot, and got busy placing them for what felt like an eternity, because this is probably the biggest pile I've ever placed. And it's huge. It now weighs 30 pounds, is way bigger than my head, is pretty hard to throw, and almost impossible to make a basket with, and I can even stand on it. Like if you think I should keep going. So I'm back at it again with the rubber band ball, and I need more rubber bands again. So I went to Walmart and counted out like 12 packs of rubber bands on the floor, and then grabbed them all and went home. And I first started with the pack I ordered on Amazon to match the surface of the ball, and after I was done with that, I took a break and came back later to place all the colored rubber bands. I dumped them all out into a pile, which was a lot, and then began placing them for quite a while until I was done. And the scale said it weighed 39 pounds, so I double checked on another one and it said the same thing. It's really hard to throw and officially impossible to make a basket with now, but I can stand on it, kinda. Like if you think I should keep going. So I'm now to part 20 of this, which is crazy, and I'm just gonna keep going. So I went to Walmart and bought all the colored rubber bands they had, then went home and dumped them all out into a pile. And then I got busy placing them until I was done with that pile. Then I got the 2 packs I ordered, dumped them all out into a pile, and began placing them until the ball was finished. And it now weighs an astounding 42 pounds. It is very hard to bounce now, and its basketball days are just over. But I am getting better at standing on it, so that's cool. Like if you want me to keep going. So I'm now on part 21 of this rubber band ball, and no one ever seems to want me to stop, so I went to Walmart and bought all the colored rubber bands they had. Then I went home and started out with the bag I ordered on Amazon, and I placed that entire pile. And then I took a break, as usual, and came back to place all the colored rubber bands. And I dumped them all out into a pile, and then placed it all, which took quite a while, but I finished, and it now weighs 45 pounds. Could probably take me out, and I broke my already broken basketball goal with it. But hey, I can stand on it. And like if you want me to keep going. So I'm now to part 22 of this, and everyone just wants more, and more. So I went to Walmart and bought more. I bought all the packs of colored rubber bands I could carry, and then I went home and dumped them all out into a pile, which was a lot. And then I got busy placing all the bands, which took so long I almost quit. But I didn't, and it's done, and now weighs 48 pounds. And it's like 3 times the size of my head and can even crush a can of Flex Seal. Wow. And I'm also able to fully balance on it now, like if I should keep on going. So it's now to part 24 of making this rubber band ball, and I went to Walmart and got more colored rubber bands. I got a bunch and then went home and started out with this new pack I ordered on Amazon. They were pretty cool and more stretchy than the normal colored rubber bands. I placed that entire pile and then took a break and came back to place all these other colored rubber bands. I dumped them out into a pile and then placed the entire thing until I was done. And I also ordered this little rubber band ball just for fun to look at and stuff. The big one now weighs 55 pounds and is pretty hard to get down the stairs. And compared to the little one, they bounce similar, but I can stand on this one and not on this one. And I can toss this one, but not this one. Like if you want me to keep on going. So I'm now to part 25 of this giant rubber band ball, and everyone just wants more and more. So I ordered these new rubber bands on Amazon, and they were way too small. So I got sad, and then I went to Walmart and bought a bunch of colored rubber bands and then went home. Then I, dumped them out into a pile and started placing them, which took longer than usual for some reason. But I finished, then took a break and came back later to place these other colored rubber bands I ordered. I placed that entire pile, and the ball kind of looks like Spider-Man now, and weighs 57 pounds. I took it downstairs and outside, then threw it, and sat on it, and it's also way bigger than my head, and I can stand on it. So, like, if you want me to keep going. So I'm now to part 26 of making this giant rubber band ball, and I'm gonna keep on going. I ordered these bigger rubber bands on Amazon, and they weren't as small as the last ones, but they were still really hard to stretch around the ball. And I dumped them all out into a pile and placed it. And it was harder to place than any other pile I've ever placed. And it was exhausting, so I left and came back the next day to place 2 more packs of them. And I placed that pile, and it now weighs 61 pounds. I took it downstairs and compared it to this ball, then threw it, and then stood on it, kinda. More like sat on it. Anyway, like if you want me to keep on going. So I'm now all the way to part 27 of my rubber band ball, and I need more bands. So I ordered these big rubber bands and started placing them. And these bands are really hard to place, so this was really exhausting. So I took a break and then came back later to place these colored rubber bands and make it look good. I placed the entire pile, and it now weighs 65 pounds. I let it roll out to the cul-de-sac, picked it up, threw it down, then tried to stand on it, then threw it again, and then my brother tried to stand on it. And like if you want me to keep on going. So one day I went out to a pumpkin patch to get the biggest pumpkin they had. When I walked up, I saw a dog and thought it was nice, but it barked at me. So I just went along, looked at the pumpkins, and here was the biggest ones, the biggest being 30 pounds. But it wasn't actually, because this one weighed 45 pounds. I looked around at the other pumpkins and ended up getting this one and the giant 45-pound one. I put it in the car and then went home to think about what I was going to do with it. I had 4 ideas: carve it, put it on my head, destroy it with a rubber band ball, or blow it up. And I ended up destroying some other pumpkins with the rubber band ball. Slow motion. And then I put it on as a hat. So, like if you want me to blow this pumpkin up, or comment what else you want me to do with it. So I've been making this rubber band ball for a long time, and it's now part 30. And I ordered another pack of these big rubber bands and placed the entire pile. And after I was done with that, I got the pile of even more of these big colored rubber bands than I did last time. And when I was done with that, the ball was looking pretty good at 76 pounds. I took it out to the street, picked it up, and threw it the best I could, and then tried again. And I ended up just laying on it and then standing on it. So, like, if you want me to keep on going. So I'm now all the way to part 33 of this giant rubber band ball, which is insane. And I got another box. I placed this entire pile of rubber bands, which wasn't that bad, and then dumped out all these colored garbage bag rubber bands. I had them in a nice pile and then placed them all one by one until I was out. And it now weighs over 90 pounds. I took it out to the cul-de-sac and tried the best I could to pick it up and throw it. And then I stood on it, and this time I actually didn't fall off it. I jumped, and here it is next to my head, and here it is rolling. Like if you want me to keep on going. So it's now part 35 of my giant rubber band ball, and I decided to change up the scenery a little bit. I dumped out a whole box of rubber bands of different kinds. I started by dumping these colored garbage bag rubber bands into a pile and putting these gloves on so I don't hurt my fingers, and putting all the rubber bands on, and this happened. Right into my eye socket. And it hurt, but I kept on going because the rubber band ball wasn't going to make itself. I finished off all these colored ones and then dumped out these purple ones that I ended up not using because they were kind of trash. I got out these ones instead and placed the entire pile. And I was done and exhausted. The ball is almost 100 pounds now, and it's a pretty big struggle to get downstairs. Took it out to the street and barely picked it up. Yeah, it's getting pretty hard to throw now, so I just sit on it and stand on it. Like if you want me to keep on going to 100. So I'm now all the way to part 36 of this giant rubber band ball. And let me know if you want to stop, but for now I'm going to keep going. So I got this new pack and, placed that entire pile on the ball, which was pretty exhausting. So I took a break, then came back later with all these colored rubber bands that I dumped into a pile and placed on the rubber band ball. And I was done. And it might have broke the scale because it reads 102 and 103. So I don't know. Then I took it downstairs struggling. I rolled it off into the yard and into the road. And just look at this ball in comparison to my head. It's massive. And it's getting pretty hard to lift and throw. And like if you want me to keep going or just cut it in half.